The Dharma, incomparably profound and exquisite, is rarely met with even in hundreds of thousands of millions of kalpas. We now can see it, hear it, accept and help it. May we realize the true mind of the Tathagata. And the Tathagata's mind is our own very mind as well. In fact, there's no separation. The Buddha recognized the deepest truth of reality many, many, many centuries ago. That deep truth of reality still exists, and it is still the same. It can never leave us. It is the face before our parents were born. It is Mu. It is the sound of one hand. So what is it? I recently saw a headline stating that young people these days are quite frightened of the future. They have very little faith that it will be positive. Just, was it this morning, last night, yesterday, there was another school shooting. This one by a 14-year-old who managed to kill 3 people before he surrendered. They're still trying to figure out what the motive is. School shootings have come to become the norm these days in America. Our level of violence is severe. And when I was looking into the possibility of whether we were a more violent or less violent period of history, and the research showed that there are many, many violent periods of history. And it is considered, from measuring the ratio of deaths to total population, that the most violent period in history was the first half, or the first, did they say the first half of the last century, the 1900s. We had any number of major wars. So looking further into this question, I came upon a magazine, Time magazine article written by a Britisher who is a war studies research fellow at King's College London. His name is Mike Martin. And here is a portion of that article that appeared in Time magazine. Why is there so much chaos? The history of violence offers a possible answers. And here's the real hooker, particularly for those of us who do Zen practice. Scholars, from psychologists to political scientists specializing in conflict, are starting to understand that the desire to belong among humans plays an outsized role in generating group violence of all kinds. That sounds pretty radical. Let's read it again. Scholars, from psychologists to political scientists, specializing in conflict, are starting to understand that the desire to belong among humans plays an outsized role in generating group violence of all kinds. This is actually the same desire that brings us to Zen practice. It is the same sense that makes us feel like we need to belong somewhere. We long to belong. We long to be part of an intimacy. And it doesn't matter whether it's another person or a group. It's the desire to return to our true home. It is the desire to recognize who we really are. That in reality, there is no separation between me and you, between the trees and the tons here, between the lights and the cars. Recently, I've been finding all kinds of Teslas on the road these days. and the sky and the clouds and the wind and the rain. There is no separation. We are one amazing, incredible beingness of the universe. A Catholic priest that I had some communication with years and years ago said it this way. He said, "We are the outpressing of God. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form." The scroll behind me, part of which you can't see because our wonderful Canon figure, the embodiment of compassion, is standing in front of it, reads, "Out of not one thing arise the 10,000 things." Out of not one thing arise the 10,000 things. In the beginning, God made the heavens and the earth and all creatures therein. This is saying exactly the same thing. So how come we metaphorically fell out of the Garden of Eden? What happened? The story is that Eve, and of course it's the woman that's the problem, always. The story is that Eve wanted an apple, and she got Adam to pick it for her, and that got them kicked out of the Garden of Eden. It's a metaphor for greed, and that is what gets us kicked out of our own intimate Garden of Eden, because we live in a Garden of Eden always, right here now. We just don't realize it. The Zen practice is the avenue to returning to awareness that we are all, not only inhabitants of that Garden of Eden, but we all are that Garden of Eden. The yearning to belong is at the core of the problem with greed, anger, and delusion all over the world. Whether it's ISIS or Al-Qaeda, whether it is the Republicans or the Democrats, it doesn't matter who it is. At the source, it is wanting to belong, wanting to be recognized, wanting to be loved, wanting to be part of. This is the core problem of human history. And yet here we are, sitting in this Garden of Eden and not recognizing it. There is a sense that there is something that we need to return to. We don't know what it is. There's just this sense that there's something important that we need to return to. And religion tries to get us there, but most religion these days has grown pretty dogmatic. And so it posits that paradise outside of ourselves. And if we're only this way or that way, or believe this or do that, we can be once more part of it. The reality is, as I keep saying, we are already that intimacy, and we can never leave it. We only have to recognize it. And in Rinzai Zen, there is still the ongoing teaching of how to experience that once more, how to recognize once more that that's who we really are and always have been. And it's only our assumptions about ourselves and things that create this disparity. we have this extended out breath, which is guaranteed to bring us into focus, letting go of external concerns. As Bodhidharma said, let go of the outside, let go of the inside. Deeply practice. Let yourself fall into that breath and then push it out further. And it will very quickly bring you to a place where there's a clarity of mind state. But of course, then fear comes up. We want to hang on to something, but we can't hang on to anything and experience that innate intimacy. Relationships are troubled because of exactly that. We're not allowing ourselves to simply be free. Of course, it does take two to tango. And hopefully we are able to find a partner who is open and clear and generous and compassionate and understanding. But there are countless examples where this is not the case. Yet again, I say, we are this intimacy ourselves. And it is only grasping after some idea of what intimacy means. It means this person that we feel like we have to love and they have to love us, otherwise we can't be happy. Or this job that we have to have, otherwise we can't be happy. Or we have to have this car or this house. Or there's a long list, isn't there? And yet the only real source of happiness lies within us. And in order to reach it, we have to let go where we think we need to have something. We can do that. It's not easy. It takes great effort and it takes commitment, and it doesn't happen overnight or even in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years or a lifetime. That may sound daunting, it may sound disappointing, but the thing is, once we start to do the work and really commit to the work, we find that we unwittingly become little by little more free. We find ourselves responding to situations instead of reacting to them. But it doesn't stop there. We have to keep going. This is why in Zen, it is said that there are 3 pillars essential to Zen practice, essential to coming to liberation. And they are a commitment to practice, perseverance, stubbornness, whatever you want to call it, faith that we can do it, regardless of what it seems like. And this sense, it's called the great doubt, which is something that puzzled me no end. What's to doubt? Well, it's this perplexity. It's this, there's something beyond. I know there's something beyond. There is this sense that there's something beyond that is really important to reopen to. And that when we do, it will free us. And that is a very accurate sense. Many years ago, I was speaking with one of Mitra-roshi's sisters, who's quite a lovely human being and pretty developed lady herself. And she commented to me that when he was a kid, he was always climbing trees and peering from the tops of trees. And the question was, well, what was he looking for? And her response was, what was right in front of him all the time. And that is the case for each one of us. What we're looking for is right in front of us. It's more than right in front of us. As the saying goes, it's closer than our own eyeballs. And we can open to it. And it does take effort. And it does take commitment. And it does take long-term commitment. And we will waver. And we will get frustrated. And we will get bored. And we will think about quitting. Even Hakuin quit for a while. He became a Zen monk by his own admission in order to not fall into hell, because he had this distinct impression from seeing a play that his mother took him to, in which I think it was a Nichiren priest was accused of something or other and condemned to having a red hot iron pot placed on his head. And so in this play, the priest has the red hot iron pot placed on his head, and he stands there calmly, with, of course, his scalp burning off theoretically. And so that gave young Hakuin the sense that if he could become a Buddhist priest, he could be saved from hell. And he was sure that his behavior as a kid, he was the usual boy, and got himself into some measure of trouble here and there. Basically just kid stuff, nothing like we might find today. And so he became a Buddhist priest. And then when he was 19 years old, he learned the story of Ganto. Ganto was a Chinese Buddhist priest, a deeply realized man who was skewered by bandits, murdered by bandits in an era in China where there was a lot of bloodshed. And it is said that Ganto screamed so loud as he was being executed that his cry was heard for 3 miles. It's a long way. He apparently was a big guy. And suddenly, Hakuin's dreams of avoiding hell were dashed. If somebody as eminent a monk as Ganto could have died screaming, of course, that scream is the scream of the universe. There's nobody screaming in his case. However, Hakuin had yet to realize that. And so he, in great discouragement, quit being a priest and apprenticed himself to a master calligrapher. He thought, well, maybe I could just earn a living doing calligraphy. And ironically, because in the years that followed, he became an incredibly masterful and prolific calligrapher, he realized that he wasn't going to be able to do it. It wasn't his, he didn't think he was good enough. So he went into a temple garden where they were in the semi-annual airing of the scrolls. It's such a damp country, Japan, that every year, twice a year, they bring out the library, unroll the scrolls, and let them dry out in the sun, and then add some particular dust, I don't know what it is, to try to keep the bugs from eating the scrolls, which they will do. And so there he was in this courtyard with his scrolls airing, and he decided he was at a loss of what to do with his life. And so if he just chose a scroll, closed his eyes, pointed his finger down at something or other in the scroll, it would tell him or give him some direction for the future of his life. And so he did that. And what he ended up pointing at was the story of Jimyo, as he's called in his Japanese pronunciation of his names. And Jimyo was so committed to practice that he would hold an awl, and if you know what an awl is, a very pointed object. It was used for, still is used in Japan for drilling holes. And he would use it, hold it at his thigh. And as he was beginning to fall asleep, after long hours of doing zazen, he would stab himself to try to wake himself up. Such was his determination. And so that reinfused in Hakuin a sense of determination and willingness to go right back at it and really persevere. And the result is that all the Rinzai lineages in Japan died out except for the one that he is the head of. What we are searching for is right within ourselves. We can find it. Countless human beings have demonstrated that. And the amazing freedom that comes as a result of doing so is beyond any description, really. All we can do is hold up people like Shirobunan, who had recognized that, had seen deeply enough that when he was caught in a web of deceit and accused of something that he had not done, that seriously, negatively impacted his life for at least a year. He was just profoundly accepting of it and felt no need to be angry that this had happened. And eventually he was exonerated. And we know the story because the village that it happened in was so impressed by his humility and his response that that story comes down to us today. It is said that it was Hakuin that had this experience, but it wasn't Hakuin. It was his grandfather in Zen, Shirobunan. Shirobunan was the teacher of Dokyo Eitan, who was the teacher of Hakuin. And the lineage goes down year by year, generation by generation. And you are part of it as well. And you too can have this very same experience that allowed Shirobunan to become so free. We all can. It's not hidden. It's right within ourselves. And so when you find yourself wanting something, somebody, something, recognize that that's only a metaphor for what you're really wanting, which is to reopening to the truth of who you really are. Once more experiencing deeply the true nature of reality and becoming free. Living the rest of your life, continuing to deepen and to express what needs to be expressed through compassion and wisdom. This is our birthright. And now we have almost 8 more days in which to really give ourselves to this. This is Rohatsu sesshin, and it is in honor of the Buddha's own awakening to that deep truth. It is also, as was said in the opening ceremony, a time when the whole earth is hunkered down into depth and darkness, rich with potential for realization. There's no better time on earth to practice than right now. And certainly with all the violence that's been going on, again, is vital. So I thank you for listening. We'll stop now and recite the 4 vows.